Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars video. This is going to be my review for Star Wars Visions, just released today on Disney+. This is the Star Wars cross with anime anthology series of shorts. So we got 9 anime shorts, all done by mostly different animation studios. I think 1 or 2 of them did 2 shorts, but I didn't look too closely at the different studios. But either way, mostly different studios, or at least if it is the same studio, they have different animators, I guess, different people, writing it and designing it and so on. So yeah, let's kind of jump into this here, because I think the main thing to say about this in terms of overall was just that I thoroughly enjoyed the 2.5 hours of content we got here across the 9 stories. Every one was like very different in their own way. I didn't think any of them were bad, but of course I have preferences for some over others. I definitely had to kind of change my mindset a little bit into it about like, okay, none of this is canon. Stop trying to overly think about like where this is set and stuff like that. That for the most part, the impression I get here is that this was sort of them turning over the Star Wars franchise to these animation studios to pretty much do whatever they wanted to with it. I'm guessing like the only restrictions on this was probably just sort of violence level and stuff like that, just to keep the kind of age rating in line. Other than that, it felt like they pretty much could do whatever they wanted with it, and you could definitely tell there was a lot of kind of creativity going on here, and in a way, acknowledging and embracing the fact that they didn't really have to confine to canon, like stick by canon for the most part. They could do more or less whatever they want, set it wherever they want. In that, what only I think one of these actually like really features like characters that we know, and that's the second one. So I'm a big anime fan. You know that I review certain anime on the channel, and I end up watching a lot that I don't talk about on the channel as well. That I just watch it in my kind of spare time. So this crossover is perfect for me. The other thing is that I was sort of like kind of prepared for this, is that this is basically just the Star Wars version of Halo Legends. It is exactly that same type of thing, and it went exactly the way I expected it to. So feel very strongly about this. Would love to see them do either another attempt at this, another batch of shorts, or I think probably the demand coming out of this is probably going to be for, yes, give us a proper anime Star Wars series that is canon, that will have the time to flesh out the characters but still have the animation style and quality that we got here in these shorts. That to me is going to be the main takeaway from this, that it was fun to get these shorts that covered a variety of different things, but probably the only main thing is just that you come out of it and are like, that was cool, but none of it overly matters because it wasn't canon. But you can see some of these art styles, some of the directions, some of the character work. You could see if they worked together with Lucasfilm on something important, they could really do something really well. The general reception I've seen so far, not just myself, has been, I think for the most part, positivity. Especially if you're familiar with anime, I think you're really going to like a lot of this. If you're not super into anime, you're definitely going to have a little bit of maybe a slightly harder time just getting used to all these kind of anime influences and the way they approach doing things. Because what I perhaps would say is maybe one slight criticism, and it's not much of a criticism because it isn't canon, so this only sort of matters, and that is just that a few of the shorts feel like they suffer perhaps a little bit because it feels more like it's Star Wars cross Japan rather than Star Wars cross anime. Now, obviously, by anime we really just mean Japanese animation. But I did feel, in terms of the design aesthetic, that a few too many times some of these shorts did go into Well, the planet in the entire Star Wars universe that we're on is basically just like feudal Japan. And that was fine once or twice, but it happened maybe a few too many times. And a couple of the shorts, I think, leaned a little too hard into that. That I can give you that in some cases, but it was taken a little bit far in some of these ones. In that there's a certain expectations of like the way they do the animation that's like anime, but a lot of this was just maybe Japan kind of coming across more than anything. But anyway, that's not too much of a problem, like I said. Let's go through this sort of like one by one, and then after that, I guess I'll do my sort of like ratings of like where I place the 9 stories sort of in order in terms of my preference. So we'll just go through in sort of the order that you actually watch them in first, and just give my thoughts. So the first one was The Duel. Now this was a pretty interesting, the style of this one definitely comes across in an interesting way to start. Just sort of, black and white, very kind of a lot of inking sort of going on. And an interesting story in that for the most part it's all action as you see this Sith, because she calls herself, I think, a Dark Lord, so it's a Sith character who's leading this sort of bandit group, and then this other guy who you think is a Jedi at the start waits before joining the fight. This village tries to fight back, they do decently well, but the second she joins the fight and starts using her abilities, it all just goes wrong for this town until he joins the fight, and it switches to mostly a one-on-one duel. And the big twist is that when he ignites his lightsaber, it's also red. And the question is, who is he? Is he Sith? Is he not? The reveal at the end of the episode seems to be that he is a Sith hunter. Now, it doesn't exactly clarify his status. Did he used to be a Sith, and now he's not, and he hunts them? Did he used to be a Jedi, but now he hunts Sith, but he uses a red lightsaber? Or is he just a guy who is skilled and has a vendetta against the Sith? Either way, some interesting stuff for sure here. Nice choreography. The crazy umbrella lightsaber was actually surprisingly cool. I appreciate that they didn't overly use it, that when it came to the actual fight between the two Force users, it was sort of tossed away as more of a gimmick. But the way that one guy was executed, where all the sort of kind of blades of the kind of umbrella went through him, and then she opens it up and it just like skewers him. Really, really brutal, but kind of clever use of that. Nice scenery throughout this. Again, at this stage early on, I'm kind of like, what's going on here? Where are we set? Because by the end you realize, okay, he's taking the crystals out of all of these Sith's lightsabers, meaning he's taken out multiple Sith. So are we in like Old Republic here, where we still have multiple Sith? And there was a few instances of stories throughout this where it was clearly set in an era where there are multiple Sith, like the army of Sith is present, or there is alluded to the idea of like infighting between the mass amounts of Sith before the Rule of Two comes into play. But again, that's just me needing to turn the sort of canon stuff off to kind of watch this. But still, interesting. And I believe there is some sort of what is it? Is it a book or is it an audio drama? They're doing a Star Wars Visions Ronin, which I think relates to this one. It's going to be sort of a follow-up to that. So I think there's going to be more Visions content related to this first one here. So that one was pretty good to start us off. Nice action. Not a ton of character, but interesting enough. Second one is probably one of the weirder of the shorts, Tatooine Rhapsody. We actually get this interesting dynamic where they cover it so quickly, but it's an Order 66 survivor, I guess, because he's clearly a Padawan of some sort. He somehow survives and comes into contact with this up-and-coming band, basically. They're trying to form a band. There's like a droid in there. I don't know the species, the triple guy, and then there's a new Hutt character introduced. And so we pretty much cut to the idea that he joins their band. He's their new lead singer. They're doing reasonably well, but because they have a Hutt in their band, they're constantly being hunted because they want this Hut to rejoin the clan, basically. So to get him back, it's the big sort of emotional thing. The band goes to Tatooine, and they're allowed to do one last song with him before he's taken away. But the song goes so well that the crowd want more, and the main character makes the offer to Jabba that you can sponsor us, you can see how popular we are, we'll be your band, and so they end up sort of succeeding because of that. I thought the music was decent. Again, I watched this all in English. I'm not. I like anime. I'm fine with watching stuff in sub where it's the Japanese audio, but in this case there was an English dub available, so I just watched that, and I didn't, for the most part, really have any issue with it whatsoever. I don't have a thing where because it's anime I feel I have to always watch the sub. That's not really me. But anyway, I thought the music was actually quite good. That main song was kind of cool once it got going. But ultimately not one of the stronger ones. Kind of had a little bit of a more kind of chibi, cartoony style rather than necessarily full-on anime. But it was still nice. The third one is called The Twins. I think this is the Studio Trigger one, so a kind of big anime studio here. And an interesting one. This is where they also did another thing where there was a lot of references to like the Empire and like Star Destroyers and stuff that is clearly visually the stuff that we're familiar with. But, blatantly it can't be in any way in line with the stuff that we know about, because where would these Force users be in the middle of all this other stuff happening? Either way, the idea is that there's these two dark side twins who've been raised to dominate the galaxy together. They are making this, what do they call it, a Gemini class Star Destroyer, which is basically two Star Destroyers fused together, where the power of both supply power to this cannon in the middle that's basically got the power of a Death Star. The girl twin, she is, it seems like, full on dark side. They are a little bit mysterious about the guy, but they gradually reveal that, oh, he's taken his power core, so there's a big confrontation, and it's revealed that he has sort of switched sides. He's more allied with the light now. She sticks to the darkness, and basically a fight ensues. There's also a whole mechanic about this Sith power armor that she has that, could potentially overload her body if she overuses it, and he senses like her destiny is that if she doesn't go away from the path she's going on, that she could like basically kill herself with this armor, and he doesn't want that to happen, so he's fighting to stop her from kind of destroying herself. And again, this one is all about sort of bombastic fighting visuals. We get a full-on like kind of General Grievous type sequence. We get him putting part of a broken kyber crystal in his lightsaber so he doesn't have a Sith blade. We have like, what is it, like he has an X-wing and he like uses the power of the hyperdrive through his lightsaber to like cut through a Star Destroyer. They also do the sort of Holdo maneuver thing at some point. There's a little bit of everything going on here. There's decent emotion in this one. This is probably the one where the voice acting performance, or at least the quality of the writing, maybe didn't feel super strong, in that there was a lot of talking and I didn't feel a lot of it came across. It probably needed a little bit more setup of like who these characters were, where they came from, to get across to that high emotional level. For the most part, I think this one was more just the action was the focus, more so than anything, and it looked really cool and there were some clever ideas, so cool enough. Number 4, The Village Bride. This is the first one that we got to where I just thought it was like super thought-provoking. It's a slower one. It's one of the few of this group that it feels like, oh yeah, they made an effort in this one to make it very character-driven, slower, focused, and kind of really create a story around it that was more than just something quite basic. And they were maybe a little overly mysterious with it, but I was, I was completely enthralled throughout it because it was very sort of sincere. It was trying to be emotional. They, of course, had the Jedi character, and they were implying something happened in the past, the loss of her master, and it's made her kind of doubt things going forward, but she wants to protect this village, which has kind of become under the thumb of the kind of bad guys, and it's all building up to the idea like she's wearing a mask, and it's like, is there a dark side thing going on here or what? She still wears her Padawan braid, even though I guess the implication is that she's now become a knight. And so it is such a fantastic moment where she finally takes that stuff off and kind of goes off into battle. There's also a sniper guy who does quite a lot to kind of also win the fight, as well as the village bride character herself, and I guess it was her boyfriend. There was a little bit of a weird dynamic there where I'm like, wait, they're using her as a hostage. Like, she is sacrificing herself basically by going over to the sort of empire side of things, to save the village from suffering. So why is this guy allowed to go with her? And it seems like they're sort of in a relationship, hence the whole bride aspect. That could have been a little bit better explained, but I thought it was plot-wise one of the most interesting ones. I really liked the art style throughout this. Again, this is maybe one of the Japanese aesthetic bits that they used a lot that I did like, which is sort of the lightsaber katana. Always very cool. But in general, I didn't feel like this one went like overly too far down that path. So definitely really enjoyed The Village Bride. Number 5, The Ninth Jedi. To me, this is where the plot, world building, like, if there's any of these that have the most potential to actually like spin off into a series of their own, it's definitely this one, because I think it had the most to it in terms of, here is a setup of this guy asking Jedi who have lost their masters and don't have a lightsaber to come to his planet, where he will give them a new lightsaber because he's discovered the secret of how to forge them on his own. We get introduced to this girl and her father, who are revealed to both be Force sensitive. They are the Sabersmiths, and the Ninth Jedi refers to this young female character who, obviously, by virtue of being an apprentice Sabersmith, is very familiar with lightsabers and is just lacking a little bit in terms of her Force sensitivity getting to that level. And they did some cool stuff with the blades here with regards to, like, the lightsaber color depends on the person holding it, and so their true intentions will always come out when they hold this blade. And just the concept of when she has her blade initially, it's sort of almost like invisible. Like, it still has the outer kind of glow of a lightsaber, but the actual inner color is nothing. And so it's like she hasn't found her kind of color yet, her intent yet. And so, her becoming the Ninth Jedi at the end is kind of interesting. It also, I felt, had the best sort of like plot twist. A lot of these have such simple plots that they didn't really have the ability to do anything like this. But this one, like the twist when it happens, where like all these Jedi are here, they finally get their lightsabers and they turn them on and they're all red, and you're like, what's going on here? And it's revealed that, oh, the message that was sent out, a lot of those Jedi, like what, I guess 7 of the other Jedi, were actually killed and replaced by dark side users trying to hunt down Jedi. So it leaves just the guy who sort of got here late, like the 8th Jedi, and then her to join as the 9th Jedi, in addition to the guy organizing this, who's secretly in the sort of like butler robot the entire time. I think this is where we have some of the best choreography in terms of... what I'd say about this one is that I feel like it kept things kind of grounded and realistic, to the point where any style, if they're going to make it into an actual canon series, I think they'll use the style of this one, where they didn't go super over the top with how fast the characters moved. It felt like, yeah, this is using the choreography that we'd expect from Star Wars, and they had characters kill each other without showing it as being like overly violent, a lot going on in the battles. Just really, really cool stuff here. And they also left it open in a way, like, to where, like, yeah, I'd love to see what happens next with this one. Where, like, this stage of the story, it felt satisfying what we got, but there's still a little bit more to go, and I kind of like that idea. Number 6 is TOB1. This was a bit of a weird one. It's obviously very stylized. It immediately reminded me of Astro Boy in that it basically felt like It was just Astro Boy and his sort of creator, but in Star Wars. It was still fun though. Like I'll straight away, I'll sort of spoil my list here. I'd ultimately say this is probably for me the weakest of them, just because it felt like the kind of creative concept behind it was so like specifically like it's Astro Boy, it's this thing, and they could have done a little bit more. It was still good. It still has interesting ideas to it, and visually, I thought it was quite good. But it felt a little like this is probably where the pacing was maybe sort of at its worst. Of like it just suddenly accelerates. Here's this Sith guy here. Here's Toby, as he's revealed, of course, doing what he's doing. This could have worked. I just feel like a combination of a little bit of everything came together to not make me really overly like this one. I think the style, especially of this one, could have been a bit better. I get the idea is that like he is this sort of cybernetic kind of character where like he's not a full-on robot, but I never felt like it made it particularly clear, like, in terms of explaining why he can or cannot use the Force and that sort of thing. So, there's always going to be one that's bottom of the pile for you. I do get the impression, I think, from most people that probably Tatooine Rhapsody or this one will be bottom. But for me, this one was the one that I just like didn't fully connect with that much, even though I still think it was decent. Number 7 is The Elder. And what I'd say about this one is like this is the one that I felt sort of like treated everything the most seriously. The characters sort of felt the most sort of normal and in line with Star Wars, and it felt like this could have very easily been like an actual episode of some Star Wars show, where it's just a master and an apprentice Jedi going out to this planet to investigate something. They hear about a dark presence, they split up to go after his ship, and then he's gone up to the mountains. The Elder, of course, it was revealed to sort of be Sith or Sith related, fights the Padawan and defeats him, leading to, of course, his main challenge against the Master. And I just really appreciated that they wanted to do a lightsaber fight in line with, I guess, this very much felt like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon against Darth Maul, slightly changing the dynamics, but it was good. Like there was character to it in that the Padawan Dan, I think his name was Don, was really well done. Like I liked the little dynamic he had with the kids, where they just met him, but even without talking to them, he was able to get them to like him just by kind of winking at them when they saw him. I liked the back and forth between Master and Apprentice here, where you think that, are they going down the path here where he's too arrogant, he's going to rush into battle and get himself killed, the sort of Clone Wars, like Nadar, Veb, and Kit Fisto thing. But no, he actually does survive the battle, even though he loses. But what he learns from his master is, so it's just some really nice words of wisdom that I actually feel it was written very well. And so, compared to some of the other ones, was it as bombastic as them? Perhaps not, but it was still very, very interesting overall. I like that kind of in a similar way to how the Darth Maul fight comes to an end. I like that the apprentice helps by throwing his lightsaber to kind of block the other blow that the Elder's going for. That was a kind of cool thing. And there's just a mystery about what exactly kind of like was he. Like he almost like turns into stone or something like that at the end. And he blows up his ship because he doesn't want them to like investigate him. Just very fascinating. And even the reflection at the end of like, we only won that because he was so old. Imagine him in his prime. We would have stood no chance. And that's just an interesting concept, definitely. So very, very cool there. Number 8 is Lop and Ocho. This one I quite enjoyed quite a lot. I thought it was like one of the more adventurous ones. It had a really good setup with the characters of like Lop joins this family and, you know, finds a new home. But what happens when they get older and suddenly issues start to come into play, and her new sister makes this decision that the father doesn't agree with, Lop doesn't really agree with, and suddenly she's technically their enemy now. And so, despite maybe not being the favored of the two sisters, the father gifts Lop with the sacred lightsaber of the family, and you know she's revealed to be force sensitive, of course, and we get the confrontation between Lop and her lightsaber, and then Ocho, who's become this sort of like enforcer or fighter for the Empire. Um, it was a really cool thing just to see these sisters like come to blows. It kind of had the dynamic that perhaps the twins didn't. That I didn't think they did enough setup for the twins to really get across like why this is a, you know, the why this is like the a terrible thing to happen. You know how well they did the Obi-Wan Anakin setup. The twins didn't really have that. Lop and Ocho kind of did, where you were so sad to see this fight actually take place. I think the only weakness with this one was just that it ended sort of in midair with the idea that it could absolutely have a sequel. And then this is probably one of the ones where it maybe leans a little bit too much into being Star Wars Cross Japan rather than Star Wars Cross Anime. Just because very clearly like the character designs here are completely like they are just Japanese full on. You know, it's one of those ones where like some slight, you know, stylistic changes, and this could have been like absolutely kind of perfect. But like I said, character wise, this was right up there with the best, I think, of what they were doing. So definitely do appreciate that. And then number 9, Akakiri. This was an interesting way to end. Again, a more serious one, but I think the main thing that came across to me was this one. With this one was that I didn't particularly like the style too much here, in that it didn't really feel very Star Warsy. At the same time, I didn't really feel like the style it did stood out that much. It just felt very normal. They managed to make Star Wars feel visually boring a little bit. That if not for him having a lightsaber, not much of it to me came across as really feeling like Star Wars. So the style of this one I don't think worked as well. And yes, they tried to be serious here, tried to do some character stuff, make it a real tragedy. And I think it worked to a certain degree, in that I liked some of the dynamics towards the end of like he had this vision of something that would happen, and by going out here to this, you know, woman he loved, he ends up actually being what causes her death, and this causes him to, in the end, turn to the dark side. And it's a bit of a twist story where like you think he's going to save the day, but he actually, to save her life, uses the sort of dark abilities of the Sith Lord, and then has to leave and become the apprentice. Again, maybe if there was more of a follow-up, if there was more of a setup for this one, I could have got behind it a little bit more. Probably the short runtime didn't help this one, and then, like I said, the style didn't quite come together for me. So, now, let's get into my ranking of the 9 shorts. To me, bottom of the list, like I said, Toby, TOB1, just wasn't really my thing. I thought it was too on the nose, sort of like Astro Boy type thing, that it didn't quite work with Star Wars for me. Number 8, Tatooine Rhapsody. It's the one of them that, like I suppose, isn't particularly serious for the most part, but it was still fun. But clearly, definitely one of the weaker ones in terms of like, I don't think the style is the strongest of them, but it has a fun factor to it, definitely. Number 7, I have as Akakiri. Again, some nice concepts, but like I explained just there, the style and then just some of the rushed aspects of the story meant it didn't really come together as strongly as it could have. That the dynamic between the two characters who were meant to be sort of kind of in a relationship, the tone that they took with it just didn't feel very emotional in a way. So Akakiri at 7. The middle is really difficult for me to know exactly what way I want to go. Surprisingly, I feel that probably the Twins is maybe my number 6, but I will say that my 6 and 5 especially are kind of relatively close together. I'll put the Twins here just because, like I said, I don't think the dynamic between the characters came across that well. It probably was one of the sort of, technically best animated sections and had some really nice stuff, but the emotion, the dynamic, to me didn't come across as well as some of the other ones. It was a little bit too much sort of like style and not a lot of substance. So that's where the Twins comes in for me. Next up, I'll say 5 is The Duel. And I will say at this point, like, the top 5 are all really, really strong. I'd say it's kind of really only the lower 4 that I would really have like major criticisms about to in any way really justify why the list is ordered the way it is. Top 5 are all relatively close together, but I'll also say that the top 3 I think is a really clear top 3. So yeah, like I said, The Duel. It's just sort of the middle of the bag for me with this one, where I liked it. It had potential. It was stylish, had some good action, but could have done with a little bit more explanation about what exactly was going on. But again, I don't really have a lot to say about it. It just doesn't quite do as much as some of the other ones for me. Number 4 is going to be Lop and Ocho, which again, I really liked it. The characters I thought were really good. It had a nice tone to it, and I got behind the Lop and Ocho character dynamic really well. I thought the father was good. It's just some of the style didn't quite work for me in terms of the approach that they took with it being a little bit too Japan and not just using the anime styling on Star Wars, but making it a bit too much just it's Japan Star Wars. Other than that, the only criticism, like I said, I could have about it is just that it ends a little bit in midair. In that, do I think they'll come back to it? I'm not sure, and because of that, it's kind of hard to place. So that's number 4. Number 3, I have The Elder. I question maybe if I might reverse my 2 and 3, looking at it now after just discussing it. But I'll stick to what I have written down here. The Elder, like I said, super, super solid. Like the tone. Nice dynamic between Master and Apprentice. Good animation, and just, they kept it simple. They also did a duel, but I thought they really created the dynamic of this one quite well, and just it had the character, it had the the tone, and it had the set piece action. So it did everything, but it maybe just doesn't stand out as much as I think the top 2. Number 2, The Village Bride. Something about this one just intrigues me every time I think about it, and just watching it, it was one of the ones where I was just locked onto it the whole time with the mysteries that they'd set up, the world building of this place. It was one of the few kind of locations that really stood out throughout the 9 short stories that like really went like, yeah, I want to know more about this place and more about this dynamic. This main Jedi character is kind of really interesting, and the bride herself was a fun character. Even the kind of older sniper mentor guy, really, really cool. Which leaves number 1, The Ninth Jedi. Like I said, this one felt like it's the most complete, ready to go if they wanted to make sort of like a series out of it, and probably like that's the team you would maybe want to do a canon series with out of maybe all of them. But I'd say most of these studios could do a good series. They probably would just need the sort of writing supervision from Lucasfilm to keep it canon Star Warsy. But this one, just in what was presented here, just felt the strongest. The twist in the story, because they had actually managed to set up some good characters and good world building. It had the mix of action characters that I liked, and was just, to me, had the combined best scores in all of the categories overall. But yeah, I absolutely loved my time with Star Wars Visions. Super fun. Hope they do it again. I'd love to see a Star Wars Visions 2. But like I said at the start, probably more than that, a canon anime series. I'd love it if they could maintain a relationship with one or a few of these studios and actually have a fleshed out series. Like, there was like 2.5 hours or so of content here. Imagine those 2.5 hours of content were like a full season of a story with multiple characters building up to one of those big bombastic fights. Like, can you imagine Lop and Ocho if that was a full, like, even a miniseries, like 6 episodes? Imagine that. Imagine they did 12 episodes of that. Imagine the Ninth Jedi with more world building setup to make everything feel all the more powerful, where you know the characters that little bit better. Like, what's next for the characters from The Elder? Like, where does that investigation into the Sith and what the Elder was up to kind of go? There's a lot of things that you could maybe like think of and like, there's some cool ideas that they could go with, and that the anime styling works super well. So 2 thumbs up, super positive overall. If I was to score the thing overall, I'd honestly say like an 8.59 out of 10 for the thing overall. Probably I'll give it the 9. Just maybe one or two of them being maybe slightly weaker than the others. Only thing that I'd really take a mark off for, because I'm not gonna like take tons of marks off it just because each of them were super different. They were fun, unique, interesting shorts, and it was a great idea, and it worked. So they're my thoughts on Star Wars Visions in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts were. In terms of other Star Wars stuff, my copy of High Republic Edge of Balance did come in, so I'll have a review for this maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after, but coming up soon on the channel will be some more High Republic stuff with the, again, we had Star Wars anime today, Star Wars manga here, and hopefully they realize the benefit that these art styles can bring to Star Wars if done correctly. So yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.